I was 18 years old and a freshman in college. I'd been dating my high school sweetheart for 2 years, had a happy relationship, and he was a year older than I. I followed him to the same college. We had plans for completing our degrees and a marriage in 4 years and happily ever after. In my freshman year, we came face to face with an unintended pregnancy. We felt like we had nowhere to turn. My parents had just separated after I left for college. His parents, he feared the repercussions of telling them. Feeling such shame and fearing rejection, I didn't tell any friends. All I could think was, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? We felt we had no money to support a child. We're just starting off in college. So in a couple of days after finding out the positive pregnancy test, my boyfriend came to me with a brochure about abortion. He had gone to the Women's Center by himself and talked to the staff there, and they recommended abortion for us. They said it would be a simple outpatient office procedure and that we could go on with our lives and we'd be all the better for it, and it'd be like nothing had happened. I was told that it was a glob of cells and pregnancy tissue. It would just be a simple procedure. That couldn't be farther from the truth. When I arrived there at the abortion clinic, my boyfriend took me, and again, the counseling took place with non-medical staff. I went back into the room and the doctor spoke with me for maybe a few minutes before I was laying flat on the abortion table. Because I was very early in my pregnancy, just about 6 weeks, the doctor chose a suction abortion. And though I was really anxious and crying, I just felt bad being there, even though I was told it was just cells, but something inside me knew. You know, I was a mother. I was positively pregnant. I was a mother, but I just I think those thoughts were in the back of my mind gnawing at me as I was lying there on the table. And the suction, I remember, was loud, and the procedure was full of sharp cramping, pain, pulling pain. It was very traumatic. I still remember that day as if it were yesterday, and that was way back in 1980. But I remember being taken after the procedure into another waiting room and given orange juice and crackers before I was sent on my way. My boyfriend and I drove home in silence. We were silent all the way for the hour-and-a-half drive home. Actually, we never spoke about the abortion, and our previously warm, loving relationship imploded within a matter of maybe a couple of months after the abortion. It ended. All these painful emotions began to arise. I mean, I have to be honest, the initial feeling after the abortion was some relief, feeling like my crisis was over, our problem was solved, so to speak. But really within days and weeks after these painful emotions began to surface, I felt this deep emptiness, like there was a black hole in the pit of my stomach. I knew something had been taken from me that I could never get again. Just shame, emptiness, regret, sadness. It's like my emotions flatlined. All these were so difficult to bear that, figuratively speaking, it's as if I tucked all these painful emotions into a box, shoved it down in the dark cellar of my heart, turned my back on them, walked up the steps, locked the door, and threw away the key, so to speak. I just wasn't able to deal with it. It wasn't long after that I began to start partying, and that was so atypical for me. Prior to the abortion, I was an AB student, student council, marching band, homecoming queen. And then after the abortion, I became promiscuous, alcohol-indulging, partying girl, and I seemed to just be in a downward spiral. I developed an eating disorder, anxiety, and just, even though I performed well at school in the evenings and on the weekends, I'd party and get numbed out through alcohol and poor relationship choices. But thankfully, 7 years after my abortion, I met a friend who introduced me to Jesus Christ, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and that's when my life began to change. I started going to church. A coworker invited me, and it was there that I was, one night after a Bible study, I was driving home, and there was a woman stumbling on the side of the road, or a figure stumbling on the side of the road, and I felt this compelling urge to go, and it was a woman who was stone drunk, and she was just like, I said, would you like a ride home? And she accepted the invitation. I got her home, put on a pot of coffee, and she was just crying her eyes out over the loss of a 29-year-old son. I don't even remember the exact circumstances of her son's death, but I just sat there. I was able to have a firsthand view of a woman's grief over the loss of a child. And it's like God used that to allow me to peer into those emotions. But it wasn't until I was about ready to leave, and she blurted out, I had an abortion. Do you think my son's death is punishment for that? And when she said the word abortion, it's like that lid to that box blew open as all the emotions surrounding my abortion flew out, and I was allowed to peer into those deep places of my heart and see what lie there was my broken and shattered heart. Nothing I could ever do would bring my child back, and the woman and I wept bitterly together. Shortly after that, I shared my experience with my pastor, and thankfully his wife actually worked at a women's center that offered an abortion recovery support group. I attended that group, and it was there that I came to terms with the reality of my child's gestational development. Even at 6 weeks, my child's heartbeat began 23 days after conception, had brain waves. It had its own separate DNA and was a separate, unique, created human being. The women in the group became, comforters in the flesh for me as they cried tears as we went through the grief process together. The anger, dealing with anger toward ourselves, our boyfriend, the staff, we just dealt with the grief and the regret and the loss. And the final group, we had a memorial where we planted a tree to symbolize, despite our children's tragic deaths, that we could have new life and new beginnings. I would say to the others who are hurting out there that there is hope for healing. You can come to terms with the loss and the regret, the loss of your child. And I just wanted to mention a resource, International Helpline for Abortion Recovery, where you can receive referral to online sources, resources, or groups or whatnot to get the healing that you might so desperately need. Also, Support After Abortion is a place you can find healing, and for men too. Men suffer from regret of abortion as well. I went on to lead groups and at the same place where I had received my healing, and worked with women over the years. Sometimes it's been 10, 20, 30 years after their abortion that women are coming to terms. Sadly, through the abortion pill now, a lot of people are calling the International Helpline much earlier because they actually see their baby. They see as they have their abortion at home. It's very traumatic for a lot of people. But what would I tell someone who was considering abortion or was stuck in the same situation I was? I would say, please choose life. Don't make the same mistake that I made and a lot of other people have made that come to regret their decision. I've met women 30 years later say, all the poor decisions in my life stem from that one abortion decision. There's a lot of symptoms that can come from that. Mental health disorder, eating disorders, infertility issues, substance abuse, anniversary syndrome, difficulty bonding with future children. You don't need to experience any of those. Adoption is a loving option. Also, there are safe haven laws in all 50 states where you can surrender your child within a certain parameter. You have to do the research for each state and have no legal repercussions, no fees associated with it. You can be anonymous even and give your baby up if you don't feel capable of caring for your child, but you can still give that child a gift of life. I believe current statistics are that for every child that is aborted, there were actually 2 couples that would be so ever so happy to have a child. I have a friend who had 7 years of infertility and was so grateful that the birth mother of her adoptive child changed her mind on the abortion table. And now my friend is the recipient of this beautiful life, who is now a 15-year-old young man full of destiny. So I would say with safe haven laws, adoptions, and even I have friends who were single mothers, single women in this, and found themselves pregnant. One woman chose life and received the support of family. But there are other people that have no family. Where do they turn to? There are pro-life women's centers that someone will come alongside you and walk you through your journey. They will help you with baby items, baby bottles, diapers, parenting classes, referrals to community resources for living help. If you are kicked out of your house, there's just so much available. If you choose to have your child, you can do it. I didn't hear that message. I would have loved to have heard that message. I would have loved to hear the empowerment. You can do this if you want to keep your child. And so I would encourage you, give life. Your life matters. Your child's life matters. So thank you so much for listening to my story. And I really appreciate it.